Have you ever ordered French fries from Jack in the Box, but then for some unknown reason they kind of like sneak two curly fries in there? It almost feels like bonus fries. You honestly feel like a thief because you got two curly fries without paying the extra money. Well, that's kind of how it feels sometimes when you buy McFarlane action figures. You get these bonus little items that I think put the figure over the top, and you feel like you're stealing from McFarlane. Not to say that that always happens, but it happens from time to time. He throws in a curly fry, if you will, if you catch my drift, if you understand my analogy. Anyways, today I wanted to talk about a wave that I don't feel, or at least I've lost that feeling as the time has gone by. I don't feel like I've gotten any bonuses, and it hasn't really aged too well, and I wanted to kind of dissect this wave a little bit more. I didn't do unboxings or reviews for these figures. I picked them up way back when they were released, and then they just kind of collected dust in my tubs. For those people that know me personally or have followed the channel, you guys know I probably have over 100 action figures in there. I just don't really have the space or the room, and sometimes I need to really get into the wave and really have time to like pose them and play around with them. So they're usually collecting dust in there, and this was one of those waves where I kind of opened like a couple of figures. I forgot about the rest, and then I came back around and actually was able to open them up and fully appreciate them. And for the most part, look, I'm a huge fan of the Dark Knight Returns universe. I love the comic book series. I love the animated films that came out later. This is absolutely peak Frank Miller. It's dark, it's gritty, it's somewhat realistic and down to earth in terms of what would eventually happen to like an older Bruce Wayne, and then what would happen when eventually like Superman succumbed to being somewhat manipulated by the US government. There was definitely a missed opportunity in the comic book series. It would have been phenomenal if Bruce Wayne's wheelchair shot like gadgets out of it, or if his crutches could be used as some sort of like melee weapons. Obviously, I'm joking. We're all headed there. We're all going to get old sometime. And I think this is just a phenomenal comic book series, a phenomenal comic book run that I think has really aged incredibly well. We've seen, for example, Zack Snyder take a lot of inspiration from this particular comic book series for his Batman vs. Superman film, which granted wasn't great, but I don't think that's the Dark Knight Returns fault. So it's just a phenomenal comic book run that if you haven't read, I definitely suggest you guys pick it up. It's like peak 80s comic book writing and artwork, and it was just a breath of fresh air that McFarlane took the risk of giving us a Dark Knight Returns wave, especially when even though it is very popular within the comic book community, it's not necessarily like a big mainstream series. For those people that don't really read comic books consistently, they probably are not too familiar with it. But he still took the risk. He gave us a Dark Knight Returns wave, which included a Joker, a Batman, a Superman, and then a Robin from that particular universe. Now, what was really interesting about this, and I've criticized McFarlane for this before, because I don't mind the horse as the connect and build a figure, but I just feel like it was a missed opportunity. I really wanted a mutant leader. He could have been a perfect build-a-figure, but instead he decided to go with the horse, which, by the way, would eventually be reused a couple of more times. I think it was reused for like the Gunslinger, and it might have been used for a Witcher action figure. I'm not 100% sure, but I know it was reused a couple of times, which, as I repeat, I don't have any issues with. I just feel like it was a missed opportunity. The horse could have been like a deluxe re-release for like a different or a slightly different painted Batman, or something along those lines, but instead he decided to make it a build-a-figure wave, which, not the end of the world, but I think he could have easily included the mutant in there as a build-a-figure. But honestly, I want to highlight the good from the wave first before I get into the nitpicks or the issues that I had with the wave as a whole. Now, phenomenal sculpting. I loved the body molds for these figures. I think they were very comic book accurate, even if definitely Superman's face sculpt looks like he's having some sort of allergic reaction. If you actually reference the comic book series, it's pretty accurate. Same thing with the Batman body mold and the face sculpt. Joker as well. I mean, they almost, I wouldn't use the phrase, and I guess it's been beaten to death by this point. I wouldn't say they've been like completely ripped out of the pages. I'm not going to say any nonsense like that, but they're really accurate for what you can get for a $20 figure. I know eventually we got like the Mafex action figures that were from this universe, which are obviously going to be of better quality, but they're closer to the 112 scale. So if you have any issues with that, you're probably going to want to skip. And not to mention, they're probably about like 3 times what a McFarlane action figure would usually cost you. So it's really up to you. But for a $20 price point or a $25 price point, I think they were phenomenal figures in terms of that. They came with a decent amount of accessories. Again, the horse was the Build-A-Figure, and it was, you know, really well done. It was a lot of hollow plastic, but again, for a $25 collectible or Build-A-Figure, I think it was a good solid addition to the DC Multiverse. So all of that aside, there were some huge issues here that I personally did run into. For example, the Robin action figure is probably the one that might stand out the most in your display. I love the fact that the articulation points are there, double jointed elbows, double jointed knees as well. Really good solid articulation at the neck as well. She can look up and down extremely well. However, you can see that the joints or the pins that McFarlane uses for his action figures that are showing skin, they just look really ugly. They're big, they're round. They're probably a few years away from that pinless technology that Hasbro is using at the moment, but I think that figure would have greatly benefited from that. Another big huge issue that I had with it were the ball joints at around the ankle. They were really thick and big, and when you're articulating it, they do the job in terms of like pivoting and rotating, but they look way too big and thick for such a thin figure. It just didn't make sense. It looks like they decided to reuse that ball joints from other figures, and it just didn't look right, especially when you're going to get her in some like really dynamic poses. Same thing with the Batman and the Superman. I could have easily seen them do double jointed elbows and just a little bit of ab crunch, but you literally get no articulation in terms of that. Single jointed elbows, absolutely, or basically no ab crunch forward or backwards. It was very disappointing. Same thing with like the butterfly joints. You don't get a lot of movement. The ankle pivoting and the ankle rotation is also very limited because of the technology that he was using at the time. Definitely, if this was released now, like in year 3 of McFarlane's DC Multiverse wave, maybe it would have been better, but I just feel like it was lacking quite a bit, especially for a wave that had so much potential. Now, the only figure that I really don't have that many issues with is the Joker. I don't really know how many different poses you can get him in, especially with his white suit, which, by the way, a really minor nitpick because it's not really that big of an issue, but I did notice that the pants are a different color white. Like the bottom portion is a little bit more beige, whereas I know the top is a softer plastic, so obviously it's, you know, different material, but it just looks a little bit weird. Aside from that, I didn't really expect great articulation from him. You're only getting like maybe 2 to 3 different poses, so even if he was just kind of like a big hunking, you know, semi like statue action figure that you get very little articulation from, I have no problems with. But the Batman, the Superman really fell a little bit short for me. In summary, I just want to say I don't hate the wave. I'm a huge Dark Knight Returns fan. I think for the most part this will be one of my main little displays on my IKEA shelf. I don't think any of the waves that have been released thus far come anywhere near it, just because of how much it means to me personally. But I do feel like if those minor little issues had been fixed, this could have easily been the best wave from McFarlane's DC Multiverse line. If we had just gone a slightly better ab articulation, if we had gotten the double jointed elbows and then slightly better ankle articulation, I think this, like I said, this wave easily could have topped anything that he has released. And then probably if the mutant had been included, that probably would have been the icing on top of the cake. But as I said, this wave is still worth picking up, especially now. I think most of the wave you can pick up for like clearance deals. I've seen them as low as like $10, some of these. So you can easily pick these up. They're still very affordable, but I'll always wonder what could have been because I feel like this wave was so close to as perfect as you can get for a $25 action figure wave. But those are just my personal thoughts, my personal opinion. I'm sure people have different takes on this wave. Very curious to see what you guys have to say. This was just kind of like me ranting on about a DC multiverse wave, but as I said, I'm very curious to see what you guys have to say. Let me know down below in the comment section. As always, I really appreciate every single one of you guys for tuning in and listening to me ramble. Let me know down below. Hit the like button, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.